Let's see.
30 minutes.
What are we gonna do for 30 minutes then? Because
I think it's set up to be
Starts at
immediately following.
doesn't, oh,
Yeah,
man. So everybody's gonna be here. I thought
People
they
that
had to
would be
stick
here.
to, I thought they had to stick to like 6:30.
Did say immediately following, so they're assuming you're going for.
We're gonna go flat out.
I thought it's on the agenda.
That I don't know.
It was 6:30 last night, which.
Yeah,
Was there anything prior to it?
no. Mm-mm.
He says bitterly.
We will get. Want to turn us on? Thank you, Matt. Okay, it's 5:30. We'll call this meeting of the Public Works and Highway Committee to order. Roll call shows all committee members are in attendance. I will entertain approval of the minutes from September 4th.
Make a motion to approve the minutes as written.
Second.
Comments, changes? Hearing none, we'll vote. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? It's unanimous. Public comment. Is there anybody, I don't see anybody in the audience. Would you like to comment on something, ma'am? Okay, come on up. You filled out a slip and we will hear from you. Take your time. Press a button. There you go. Now you're on. Here's the slip.
I just want an extra couple minutes. Something came up at the dump this week and there's a couple issues I really think should be taken care of. However, I wish Mr. Recklow was here. I think I'll wait for those comments till the next time because I'm really upset. As you know, I've been very upset with the way this trustee board is run. This community is very fiscally conservative and any debt is to be scrutinized very closely, and I don't think it is. And you even mentioned something when I brought up Sterling Pharma. Oh, we're going to extend the TID. You know what? TIDs are not to the advantage of a community like us, regardless. And you know what that is saying? That's saying, here's what this man said if you listened to him last week. We don't have a commitment from him. He said, if you know what if means? It means not really, maybe. Now, if you had a girlfriend and you asked her to marry you and she said, okay, but I want to get the wedding plan. I want to get the caterers called. I want to get everything done first. All my bridesmaids, get all their dresses. And then the guy says, well, when are we getting married? If I'm going to spend all this? Well, I told you if this and if that. That's exactly what this company's doing to you people. And you're not saying anything. You're not even checking them. I checked their record. They don't have a good record with their employees. They have a problem. You can sit and you can scowl and make a face. It's there. It's on the internet. It's there. These people that work there are scientists and chemists. They're not idiots, okay? And so I really wish you look at what you're doing with my money and some of your money. Some of you may not be here for a couple of years down the road, but I'm hoping I will be here. And any debt poses a financial risk for our residents. We are heading right now into an economy that is very dangerous, okay? Depending on this election, if one party wins, we're not going to have a dual party system anymore, and we're going to wind up in a lot of problems, okay? Where companies are leaving, they're closing, and this pharma could possibly close. If taxes are raised on them at the end of the year, they have an out where they can go and move their company. And I went to the dump the other day, and this is very disturbing. Why would you fix something that's not broken? The dump we have there, I went there, I hire a college kid that helps me out because I can't do the work. And he helps me, we haul it to the dump and I go with my car and they know who I am now. But he said, well, starting in January, nobody can bring this here. I said, what are you talking about? He said, you have to have a permit. I said, but I hire a kid. He doesn't work in Germantown. He said, well, that's too bad. What kind of system is that? I pay taxes for the use of that dump, and I'm not gonna have someone tell me that my guy I hire and pay for can't dump there. I don't pay him to dump. That's part of his job for me. So I think you need to take care. He said, and then he had people yelling to find out they're moving the dump. I know why you're moving it, because these two guys, the president and Crickle, want to plan that property for another fabulous development with probably another 10. That's what they got on their mind, and burden us some more with something else. This has got to stop. What's wrong with this board that you can't see this? We have 4 people that come here every week and stand up, and they're so upset, and they're not stupid people. They study things. I study a lot of stuff, and it's really ridiculous. And not only that, but I went on the internet to show you, it's a report from 2000 to 2024. Germantown's growth was minimal. It's not overbearing, it's minimal. And it was 18,311 in 2000. It went to 21,066 in 2024. The average growth for 10 years is only 0.49%. And you guys want to burden our budget on this declining growth, which they say it is declining?
Ma'am, could you wrap it up in about 30 seconds, please?
Yeah, I'll try. This is
You will,
important.
please.
You're taking us to the cleaners, what you're doing with our money. And again, your attitude, we don't care. We're going to vote wherever we want. And then they were yelling at the dump about the Grosnick property. Is there a for sale sign on there? Why isn't there? And public meetings, I'm going above this board. I'm going to spend the next week, I'm going to make some phone calls. I think that something has to be done with what's going on here. I feel we're going to be burdened beyond what we can
Okay.
afford to pay.
Ma'am, thank you for your comments. Thank you. We'll move on to unfinished business.
Again, don't you dare. It's
Have
just
no unfinished
ridiculous.
business. We'll move on to new business.
Yes, move on.
New
to-
business A, approval of a change order to, excuse me, ma'am, you're out of order. Approval of a change order to Rupert Melke for modifications to the sewer facilities plan for $12,800.
All right, so this item is an amendment to the facilities plan that we just had before the committee last month. The plan was submitted to MMSD and Sewer Pack and DNR for review, and we received some comments back that need to be addressed in the plan. So it's a change order or an amendment to the plan that includes addressing the scope that was identified in the comments from Sewer Pack and DNR and MMSD. What it amounts to is that they want to see the sanitary sewer service area, which is also getting amended, and the facilities plan to align. So the boundaries of the areas, the planning boundaries are the same. And that's something that wasn't done in the plan. It wasn't a regulation that we were aware of, or a regulation, I suppose, that we were aware of. So it requires adding some area in some cases and removing some area from the plan in some other locations.
Committee,
And then kind of everything that flows from that.
comments? Rick?
I mean, I guess it makes sense to line up. So, but if this is a requirement, there isn't really much we can do. So I'll make a motion to approve the amendment of professional service agreement between the village and Rupert Milky to update for $12,800.
Second.
Comments? Bob?
So is this additional fee strictly because the boundaries changed? They're updating the plan?
Yeah, because the sanitary sewer service area boundaries are about to change. They want the sanitary sewer service area, the new area that will be approved, to align with the facilities plan. And
Is
then, So some areas that were in their calculations will come out, some will move in based on how those boundaries weren't completely congruent, because we weren't necessarily aware of that requirement. So, and then all the calculations that kind of flow down from those ins and outs need to be updated in the report as well.
Because the way it was worded, they said that they needed additional money, not only for that, but to respond to questions from DNR and from other agencies, which in my opinion is part of your original scope. So I wouldn't want to give them more money just to respond to comments from review agencies.
Yeah, and I think there's an opportunity for this to come in lower than the amount that's listed here. I think this is worst case scenario if we have to spend the full amount, but I think some of it too will depend on the amount of time there is back and forth between those other agencies. Some of it will depend on the size of the differences in the areas that need to be recalculated too.
So is this a not to exceed contract or amendment?
Tim, do you?
Yeah, it's a not to exceed.
Okay, because that's what you're saying it is, the way you're describing it.
Right.
What is this of what the original contract?
Don't have those.
I think what would be helpful in the future with amendments and things like that is to remind us what the original contracts are, so we can get a feel for how much additional scope or effort there is on this.
I agree.
Last question here. Well, that answers it. Thank you.
Bill, anything?
No,
No?
thank you.
We have a motion and a second. We'll vote. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? It's unanimous. Moving on to item B, award of the Old Farm and Main Street Lift Station Study, professional services agreement to Rukert and Melke for $50,000.
So this is the additional study that was determined necessary coming out of the facilities plan. This is studying in greater detail what they believe are the approaches necessary to upgrade Old Farm and Main Street, and getting into further details, additional technical study and analysis, and verifying that or identifying another course of action for the lift stations. But we would use this to lead into design for the upgrades, and it can also help us make our decisions on what to do with Division Road.
Okay, committee?
Make a motion to approve. Is it 50,000 for both? Is it 50,000 apiece or is it 50,000 for the?
It's 50,000 for both, and it also includes the transient pressure analysis of both force mains because they're gonna be using a subcontractor for that.
So that's a $3,500 item per lift station.
It's part of the 50,000.
Right.
And if it's not required, they would back that out.
Correct.
Yeah, and the letter here says that, it says exactly that. The cost for the transient analysis at each lift station is approximately $3,500. If it's determined it's not required for one or both, that cost can be deducted.
So why is this a lump sum? I don't like lump sums. I like to see like cost, not to exceed, then it's really based upon the hours that they spend on the project. Lump sums, there's such a great opportunity for consultants to really make a lot of money on these things.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, we can certainly take that approach going forward, knowing the feedback. It's up to you folks if you'd like us to go back and have this, recoded as a not to exceed contract.
I wouldn't do that right now, but moving forward, just a heads up. I don't like lump sums. I like,
How have we worked with them in the past? Has it always been lump sum or?
I believe so. I believe,
Some of their stuff is time and material, other stuff is not to exceeds. It just, I guess it kind of depends on the scope of what we're asking them to do is.
Mhm.
last comment is always R&M. Rukert Milky, I know it's all.
I think, yeah, I mean, I think with this one, they're on their third report, kind of diving into additional levels of detail related to this. So that's why we're bringing this forward without competitive bid or proposals. If we were at the start of the process, then I think that would be warranted. But here they've got the kind of the institutional knowledge already, and there'd be some cost associated with switching to somebody else.
Sure. Continuity is huge on these
Yeah.
things, so, yeah, I agree. Oh, yeah.
Any more comments? Rick, anything? No, Phil?
We got a motion?
We don't have a motion.
No, I thought I made a motion to,
Do you have one?
I interrupted myself.
Yeah,
I don't know if we had a second, so I'll second. Rick Miller.
so Bob said he made the motion, but then just started talking.
Phil said I interrupted myself.
Yeah, okay.
I didn't
So
think we had a
it's Bob
second.
with the motion and Rick with the second. Any further comments or,
One quick one. The reason I asked about the 50,000, I thought I saw in the spreadsheets on our budget of 100,000 for this. We better double check that.
This is the detailed analysis of what we need to do at those two locations. The additional money in the budget is to move forward into design, plans and specs so that we can have this thing ready to go when we have to pull the trigger to do the upgrades.
Okay, so the additional 50,000 designs and design
Correct.
effects. Okay.
okay, motion and a second, we'll vote. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous. Moving on to C, award of the 2025 sewer lining contract to Vision Sewer for $140,633.50.
So this is the last sewer lining project after a number of years. As it's written up here in the item, this is for an area in the Germantown Business Park, and there's a map kind of associated with that. It's a relatively small lining compared to what was done the last couple of years. Vision Sewer was the only bidder, came in at $133,633.50. They've been a good contractor, and this came in under budget. So we're looking to award this with 10% contingency for a total of $140,633.50.
Bob?
Why the contingency?
It's just for anything that may come up during the course of construction that would otherwise force us to stop and get additional approvals. If it's a relatively small amount, 7,000 and under, we can proceed with authorizing the work versus waiting for administrator or committee or board approval. It just allows the project to flow a little more easily. Generally speaking, we haven't had to go that route with Vision Sewer and the sewer linings, so we're not expecting it. Whereas in other projects, I think there's more of an expectation that you will have to encounter some change orders or contingency. But it's there just in case.
I don't like the just in case. I'm seeing more and more of this from supervisors and on different projects. And to me, it sends a message of lack of confidence in the scope that was negotiated with the contractor. It creates a lack of incentive for us monitoring that, knowing that there's this contingency instead of holding the contractor to the numbers that they gave us. I mean, we know how tight money is around here.
Yep.
And I'm going to start not approving these contingencies, as we move forward on this. I want to see us hold them to the number that they gave us. I don't want to create this slush fund. And if you need more money, let's hear the justification on it. I understand that sometimes it'll take time and that could cost you more money as the contractor's waiting for decisions. But I think we can make that. I just don't like this trend of all of these contingencies that are being built into these contracts.
Yeah, I think if I understand what you're saying, and I think if that's the case, we should think about adopting some sort of policy as it relates to change orders and contingency for contracts and follow that. Maybe some authority is delegated to staff and some is retained at committee or board. But for relatively small change orders, it's difficult to stop work for a period of 2 or 3 weeks in order to get authorization to continue. So that's why it's built in there, and Tim can correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't believe Vigisur was like made aware of the contingency. Our intent is to hold them to the contract if at all possible.
The contingency is there to address any unseen circumstances that might arise in the job, such as we get into a manhole to shoot the liner and now it's leaking because we have a period of high groundwater. It allows us to do a time and material grout on that manhole. Just helps keep the job flowing, and it gives transparency because we always come back to committee at the end.
And the definition of contingency. On all projects, we try to build the contingency into how we scope these projects. But I think it's getting to the point where we're starting to abuse this,
Mhm.
this line item, this additional cost.
We don't have a motion yet, we're having discussion, but we've done contingencies for a long time. And as long as the supplier isn't aware of it, and we are aware of it, I think it allows us to flow with the project if we need to. So I personally don't have a problem with it, but everybody's different. I certainly respect your viewpoint.
How does the, we don't use the contingency, how does that get back into the general fund? Is that?
Well, it would remain in the sewer utility fund.
Less in the budget.
The award of contract would be for the bid amount with Vigisur. It would not include the contingency.
Can I have a motion, please?
I'll make a motion to approve the contract with Visusur in the amount not to exceed $104,633.50.
I'll second.
Further discussion?
Yeah, one question. So Vigisur is the only bidder on this. Are they one of the only companies that can do this type of work?
No, there's 3 or 4 major players in the area, but it's such a small job that the other people probably couldn't absorb a mobilization coming from Minnesota or.
Oh, I see. They'd be out of state
They're
or
out of state.
out of area.
They're our usual vendor for this kind of work.
They are.
Yeah,
They've done a lot of lining for
Yep.
us.
For us in the past.
They invented it,
Mhm.
basically. How does this compare to our estimate?
Well below.
Well below? What was our estimate?
We were estimating 220,000.
Trees, there's quite a bit less.
That's a good number to see too on these. If there's only one bid, just to give us some credibility with that number.
Further comments? We'll vote. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous. Item D, award of the Village Hall Access Control System Installation Contract.
So this was an item that was identified in the 2024 Buildings and Grounds capital budget for the upgrade of the access control system at Village Hall. And this is starting down a path where we're upgrading facilities to kind of line up with the same type of system that was installed at the Department of Public Works. And that was done after a pretty extensive vetting process with the Department of Public Works, with the police and fire departments as well. So the idea is to replicate, what we did in Public Works and grow the system into other facilities. Provides a number of security benefits, primarily getting rid of physical keys and being able to electronically assign and unassign access to folks. So part of the process would be that after this is installed, we would take keys back and reduce the number of those in circulation, which has some big benefits. And then just kind of bigger picture, this is a project again that's being brought forward as a request to award this to O&W Communications without a bid. So in order to be transparent on that, I think there's a number of benefits for security systems where you don't want to have multiple vendors working on these systems. There's a lot of benefits to having an installation done in the same way across all your facilities. And it seems like it should be something that is pretty straightforward and one vendor is a lot like the other. But when you look in these cabinets and you see all the wires and how things are done, you want a consistent approach across your buildings in order to do like appropriate troubleshooting that you can learn on your own. There's also security benefits. I don't think we want a bunch of different vendors coming in and servicing our different systems. So then more and more people are aware of how our system works. So for that reason, tighter security, I also think it's a benefit that we continue down the path with O&W Communications. And it's better for maintenance too. So down the road, these new systems won't be new anymore. And they'll need some type of maintenance or service. And it's easier to go to and usually more cost effective to go to the place that installed them because they have the familiarity with the system. And then in addition to that, all these systems are so highly technical now in terms of network devices and IP addresses and firewalls and so on and so forth, that you really need somebody to be an expert on these type of systems. So we went to O&W Communications, who did the work in the new DPW, and they came in essentially right at the budget. The budget was $52,000. And 9 months or 10 months later, the bid came in just like $2,455 over. We've identified a way to cover that funding as well. So we're looking to proceed with the proposal from O&W. Be happy to answer any questions. Scott's also here and he is highly involved in this process as well and some of the history.
I'll make a motion.
Well,
I will.
Oh, go for it.
I make a motion to award the contract for Village Hall access control system installation to O&W Communications for an amount not to exceed $54,455 from the accounts as noted in our staff recommendation.
I'll second.
Further, just, oh, Phil.
What's the technology, please?
The technology,
Yeah, what's the technology?
it's a wireless card reader technology, so it's capable of.
So it says it interfaces with cell phones though, so it's got to be more than a wireless card reader because that's RFID. So
The readers actually have Bluetooth technology.
it's Bluetooth technology.
It's both. Yeah, it's capable of both.
So did you get a card and then the option to use your phone with it?
It'll probably be the reverse. We'll prefer to issue the credentials to the phone.
Get an
And
app.
then as a fallback, the
We-
card could be available.
Okay, so, and if, do we reimburse for cell phones or no?
We do for select staff. Yeah, so not everybody, there's two options for cell phones if you work for the village. One is they issue you a phone and it's yours and you kind of keep your work and your personal phone separate. The other is that you get reimbursed for a portion of your fees
And
and you use your private phone.
if we don't reimburse, the person can have a card issued to use the card to enter and
That's-
out of using their phone.
Yeah, they could choose to use their personal phone regardless, but that would be an option if we're not able to go that route with them.
And then who's the administrator of the system for us then, please? Because,
Mr. Anderson.
okay. Because these, I have seen these systems and they are at times labor intensive.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I mean, that's another reason to go with a good vendor that is able to help you through the process. I've got a lot of experience with these systems. And it's definitely something that you need to maintain and take time setting up to make sure you're getting what you paid for. And then they take effort to maintain too, because it sounds easy, like you can just unassign or assign access, but it's easy to forget too. So you have to ensure that you have appropriate controls in place to make sure that that stuff happens.
Thank you.
Rick?
Yeah, I was just gonna say a couple comments. I'm very familiar with these systems as well, and I manage ours at my office. And honestly, a lot of it is set it and forget it as soon as you get the cards administered. But you're right, you have to keep up with things when personnel changes. I fully agree that you want the same company among all the buildings to do this in the same system. So it makes a lot of sense to do it with O&W.
Further comments? We have a motion, we have a second. We'll vote, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous. Award of the Village Hall Security System Replacement Project to O&W Communications for $9,300. Related, I presume.
Yep, very much a related item, just a different aspect of the security system at Village Hall. So what we were talking about before was the access control, badging in and out of doors and controlling access that way. This is kind of what would, I guess, typically be called a burglar alarm system. This is the panel that will alarm when a perimeter door is breached, and so on. That system, the existing system at Village Hall, suffered a catastrophic failure earlier this year. So currently, we don't have a system, but because the alarm monitoring project, which we also used O&W for, had some remaining funds, we'd like to use those funds in addition to some of the Village Hall operating budget to award this contract for a similar Bosch-operated burglar alarm system at Village Hall. And there's benefits to going with Bosch in terms of the integration that's capable between this Berg system and the access control system.
Committee?
I'll make a motion to approve the security system replacement with a contract to O&W Communications for $9,300 from the state aid accounts.
Second.
Rick?
Matt, that amount seems pretty light. Must be reusing virtually everything we have right now.
A lot of the wiring, yeah. Yeah, so there's existing door contacts with wires pulled back to the panel.
Mhm.
We hope to use almost all that again. And that's a lot of the labor.
Rick? I mean, Bob, I'm sorry.
I assume we got a pretty good break from O&W because they're doing this other contract for us.
Yeah, that was made abundantly clear to them when Scott was negotiating with them. We, across this, the DPW, the Village Hall proposal and this proposal, I think we got very good pricing out of them on these projects. The challenge will be to continue to get that as the system grows. But, you know, that's just something that, you know, through Scott's continued management of the program that we'll be looking to do. Because it does get trickier. The more entrenched you get with one vendor, the more difficult competitive pricing is.
And then for those listening in the public, we do have a backup burglar system in place until this goes in up and running, right?
And we're next door to the police station, which helps.
Just want to make that clear.
We have a police department nearby.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any more comments? We'll vote, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous. Finally, moving on to F, approval of an agreement with MLG for sanitary sewer easement and land transfer for High Point Pass right-of-way.
Yeah, so this is a step that's needed in the continued development of the High Point Pass, which again, as a reminder, and there is an exhibit in here on where High Point Pass is and what we're talking about. But it's what will be a public road, currently a private road, running from Holy Hill Road south to the railroad tracks. And basically, for two reasons, we need to have this agreement put in place. First is we need to acquire the right-of-way necessary to build the road. So part of this agreement is MLG giving us the necessary land for the right-of-way. The other part is granting us access to their property and easement for the sewer, which will be aligned through their property. And there's an exhibit here that shows the path that would take through their property to deliver the sewer to their parcel, to the Holy Hill storage parcel, and to the Truck Country property. So it's worth noting that this is an agreement that doesn't have any dollars exchanging hands. They're giving us the right of way. They're getting a big benefit of having sewer running through their property, which, you know, makes it much more desirable to potential developers, and they have the ability to connect to it as well.
Ready?
Or motion there.
Oh, yeah.
Are you making a motion, Bob? Is it?
Do we need a motion on this?
We do, don't we?
Yes, it's an action item for approval.
So I screen up now. I'll make a motion to approve, what's the official wording?
Agreement with MLG
Thank you.
for sanitary sewer easement and land transfer. Driveway pass. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Any further comments?
I have a quick question.
Rick? Oh, wait.
Oh, sorry. Did you have your hand up? Sorry.
Kind of. So my understanding is, based on this, that High Point Pass, that land is owned by MLG right now? And this is being transferred
Portion
from
of it.
them?
A portion of it.
Portion of it.
Yep. So the other portion is owned by Holy Hill Storage, which will eventually be owned by Truck Country and then dedicated over to us
Got it.
through the development agreement that was approved last month. And then there's also some property to the south, which is part of that MMSD land transfer, where the village will be acquiring that property directly.
Okay. And they're doing this for no cost because they can hook up.
They can hook up, and they can hook up at no cost. So I think,
Ah.
okay,
Okay.
those two things together make it
Yeah.
pretty desirable for them.
Good. So, okay.
For my future reference, south of the railroad tracks, how arbitrary is that alignment of the road slash sewers slash water?
The route for the utilities is pretty well established.
That's what we're seeing in the purple
And let me pull up
on the
the,
map.
yeah, more or less. The road would very likely follow the utilities. It would just make sense. But yeah, the path for the utilities is something that the village of Richfield has pursued in terms of acquiring the necessary land for the easement and right of way. And they're in the process of doing that right now, despite the rest of their project kind of being on hold. They are using whatever remaining funds they have to acquire the right of way there.
Thank you.
Further comments? We'll vote. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous. And that brings us to the director's report.
Okay. So I'm just going to talk briefly. I know there's some interest in keeping this a little more brief tonight. But I wanted to highlight that I believe as of today, if everything went according to plan, that our paving activities for the 2023 and 2024 road program should be complete. There was a small section on Concord this morning that needed to be completed. So it's good news. We're heading in the right direction with the road program. First of all, finishing work that was not completed in 2023 and then getting through the 2024 work. There is restoration, some striping on Maple Road and some other things that will take place over the next couple of weeks, but the paving itself, we're through that. And I think as staff will all be thankful when that's over. I highlighted, and we may talk about this later tonight, so I'll steal some of my thunder, but Jake, our engineering tech, is working on kind of an expansion of our road program and seal coat plan. Typically, it's been presented as a 5-year plan, and we're expanding that out to 10 years just to try to project a little further out, when we'll be addressing roads. And then our seal coat program was always kind of a year-to-year thing, and we're turning that into a 5-year plan. So there's been a handful of staff meetings associated with developing that out a little further, collaborative between all the different parts of DPW, and I think that's been pretty productive. So I believe that we'll be able to present the 10-year road and 5-year seal coat plan for this committee next month in anticipation of getting started on next year's work, even a little sooner than we did this year.
Okay.
Matt, in regards to the road program, whatever happened with Manor Court, those driveway approaches?
Those have all been replaced.
I didn't get any calls.
calls of,
From the property owners.
Of joy?
no, I
Of
mean,
happiness?
honestly, I think the feedback was positive. I think people were pleased with the work.
Good. It's good to hear. Good not to hear. Good to hear.
Yeah, no comments are good comments, I guess.
It's,
right?
when people are happy, we never hear anything.
Wow, that's
Yeah.
pretty.
So yeah, that was another thing that's good to have complete and behind us. So no, we're anticipating that all the scope of the 2024 road program will be able to complete this year and hopefully the next couple weeks.
I'd like to compliment you and your staff for working through that item because it was kind of touchy there with a property owner who had were pretty set in their ways in that, and you guys handled it very well.
Thank you. Yeah, I think, even with, some of the road work that we've been doing over the last couple of weeks, there's certainly been a number of residents that we've had to work through issues with and some issues that are still unresolved and may require attention in the future. It's just kind of the nature of the work to some degree. But yeah, I mean, I'm pleased with how Country Bell Manor turned out and that we're not getting any additional follow-up requests at this time.
What else you got, Matt?
All right. Yeah, the utility adjustments, that's just kind of part and parcel of the road program. That was a lot of work for utility staff, having some additional scope and having some additional work. So they had a couple of long days doing some manhole adjustments ahead of the surface course going in a couple locations. So appreciate their efforts there. Then just moving down, we've been working on the public safety building needs assessment and study. We are kind of nearing the end of that. We have a draft report. We're waiting for some revisions to that report based on a final meeting, and we're anticipating presenting the results of that study and some of the cost estimates and site evaluations that were done to an upcoming village board meeting. And I'd have to check on my notes whether that would be next week or the board meeting following. But very shortly, the results of that study will be on the agenda for the board to consider and discuss. And then related to that, one thing that came out of the study was, how do we address some of the needs of the fire department in the near term? And what we feel that will lead to is a proposal for a remodel of station number 2 that could proceed before a new facility because they have a substantial amount, I believe 10 new staff coming in starting in January, and just very little space to deal with all those people. So those are 2 things that there'll be more information on coming up here in the next week or 2.
Station 1.
Station 1 was a volunteer station, and I don't believe it even has sleeping quarters.
Okay. Don't go delaying us now, Bob. Okay.
Our MS4 permit application, Kevin just worked through some of the last details and we submitted our draft application to the DNR yesterday. Is that right, Kevin? Yesterday? So we're happy to be over that hurdle. That was something that was a bit of a difficult process because of how our compliance in the past complicated things. So moving forward, we're going to be very mindful of the different requirements that are in that application that we're sort of tied to now that we've submitted it, and make sure that we're following those and documenting those appropriately so we don't have this issue 4 years from now. And then just real quick on the department updates, I think everybody met Heidi Van Beek. Heidi started with us 3 weeks ago, is that right? The 9th, yeah. So she's been great in the first couple of weeks. We're happy to have her here. And hopefully you'll see her at many meetings to come. So with that, we're actually up to our full staffing level in Public Works. There was a hire of a mechanic after a long vacancy there, and there were a couple of hires in. Scott, are you one short actually? Yeah. Now that I'm talking, I'm remembering that Scott's still one operator short. So scratch this comment. The struggle is real. We'll continue looking for one more operator. I've got political signs in the right of way is something just to talk about briefly. This is something that came up, and we asked the village attorney for an interpretation of the ordinance related to political signs in the right of way, which led to us posting kind of a clarification on what the rules are on the Facebook page. It's kind of an unusual ordinance, and it's difficult to enforce for staff. There's not much we can do about it right now, but down the road, it may be something that we want to consider some revisions to that make, if we're going to be asked to enforce the ordinance, that we make the ordinance easier to enforce.
Yeah.
Past Public
I didn't
Works
think they were
collected them and
Yeah.
took them to the Public Works building.
They just went away.
That's where I got all mine.
Yeah, you just go shopping there. Yeah, I mean, what's different is that in a lot of places, the right of way is sort of like you need the municipality's permission to do anything in the right of way. But how our ordinance reads is that the adjacent property owner to the right of way can actually give permission or give themselves permission, I guess, to post something in the right of way, as long as it meets certain parameters. So we see this around the village, and we've had a number of different complaints about the placement of signs, and some of them are in the right of way. And based on the interpretation of the ordinance that we have here, it's really hard for us to do anything about that. So, and then last thing I'm going to mention, the other item I'll bring up probably later tonight. But the DPW open house is scheduled for October 26th. That's going to be from 10 to 2. We had a meeting last week with the police department and fire department. They're going to be involved and have some of their equipment on hand to show as well. We'll be planning to show some of our equipment and give some tours of the facility, so that'll be open to the public.
10 to 12 or 10 to 2?
12. 2 hours.
Okay, because you had said 2.
You did say.
Oh, I did say 2, sorry, 10 to 12.
Okay.
And then the complaint log, it's a little more thorough than last time. Heidi's been doing a really good job of getting this up to date. So since she started on the 10th, that's basically the data that we have there. And next month we'll be kind of back up to full reporting capabilities on complaints.
Okay, thank you, Matt. And with that, that concludes our Public Works meeting, unless anybody on the panel here has a comment or anything. So we will close the meeting at 6:17 p.m. Our next meeting would be on the 5th, which is Election Day. I don't think we want to do that. Do you want to move it to the 12th, the following week? Does that work for everyone? 5:30 on November 12th, okay? Okay, and with that, we will close the meeting. Thank you, everyone.